I do want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. Before we get started, I wanted to share a little bit about what Oklahoma Insurance Department, or OID, does. OID is a state agency, and we are responsible for regulating the insurance market and enforcing the insurance-related laws of the state. We have an entire team devoted to helping you guys and by providing consumers with accurate information and timely assistance. We can also help deal with your insurance company if you cannot reach an agreement regarding a claim. If you would like to reach out to us for help or if you have any questions, you can call us toll-free at 1-800-522-0071. You can also visit our website at oid.ok.gov. For today's webinar, you will be able to see and hear us. However, we cannot see or hear you. If you have a question, please feel free to post that in the chat. Down at the bottom of your screen, you will see several options, one of those being chat. And if you click on that, you can type your question there. We will save time to answer questions at the end of the webinar. Now I'd like to introduce Ray Walker. Ray is the Divisional Director for the Medicare Assistance Program at the Oklahoma Insurance Department. Mr. Walker has over 20 years of experience working in and around the healthcare industry, primarily in insurance, and has had the privilege of speaking to groups across the state and around the country. Ray, over to you.
Thank you, Rachel, and good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our first webinar in 2022. For those of you who attended last year, welcome back. For those of you who attended for the first time, we're really glad that you're here and happy to have you. We hope you can join us for the other webinars that will be coming up in this series, coming up each Wednesday for the next several weeks. At the end of the presentation, we'll have information about those upcoming events, so we hope you guys will take the time to register for those. These events are made possible in part through funding that we received from the Senior Medicare Patrol Grant through the Administration for Community Living. This grant provides us with funds to educate seniors on how they can protect themselves from becoming a victim of fraud and waste and abuse in the Medicare system. It's estimated that over $60 billion is lost every year from the Medicare Trust Fund due to inappropriate activities. And the only way that we're going to have any impact on this problem is if Medicare beneficiaries actively participate by reporting suspicious activities. So we'll be providing you with our contact information at the end of today's event in case you want to use it. So now I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Jose Olivero with the Social Security Administration. Mr. Olivero has been with the Social Security in Oklahoma since 2004. Prior to that, he was the wage report specialist in Oklahoma and North Texas and the agency's liaison officer to the IRS. Mr. Olivero holds a bachelor's degree in Romance languages from Cameron University in Lawton and completed his graduate studies in Spanish literature at the University of Oklahoma. He retired as a Sergeant First Class from the U.S. Army Medical Corps after 21 years of active service. Jose, we are very glad to have you and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Ray and Lauren, for the opportunity to speak to our audience here in Oklahoma concerning this very important issue of fraud and identity theft, which as we look at it, we know that many people in Oklahoma are victims of this crime. So having this opportunity to share this information is really a very important to us. We are very grateful. So I will start my presentation here. Let me see if I can get this to work right. Okay, here we go. By the way, my email would also be at the end of the presentation. So if anyone after this webinar need to contact or wishes to send me an email, you're more than welcome. And we'll try to do everything we can to answer your questions if we don't get a chance to them during the webinar. So this is all about scams awareness, okay? And in order to be aware of this, there's three things that you need to be aware of. Oh, excuse me. First of all, you need to understand the threat of scams and ID theft. And then exercise caution when you are engaging people either through the internet or text messages or emails that you have no idea who these people might be, or perhaps that unsolicited gifts and programs that might come in through it, those mediums. And of course, very important is to secure your personal information, to ensure that you shred documents, that you don't simply throw away things, and where thieves can get to it. So we're going to be going through those things. And the main thing to remember, if you become a victim of fraud through these systems, is to visit our website, http ://OIG at .ssa.gov, and we'll have that posted for you as well, to let our internal police system within Social Security know that there's an issue. Most of the time, once we are aware of what's going on, our OIG people are able to go to the source and stop a lot of these unsolicited mails or phone calls that people receive. So first of all, aware about Social Security. We do not contact people out of the blue. Generally, those who have some kind of business going with us, we may call them by phone. But once again, you already reach out to us, whether you apply for disability, retirement, you have some issue that you Medicare, that you contacted Social Security. So we will call you back. Now, we will not call you out of the blues if you don't have any business with us. Number two is that the Social Security employees will never threaten you for information. Remember, we already got your name, your Social Security number, your ID, so we don't need any of that information from you, okay? So we will not threaten you to, with potential arrest or legal action, or, we're going to take your property, or the police is coming to your house. None of those things are initiated by Social Security, okay? In those cases, the call is fraudulent, and you should just hang up. Do not give out any information. And for those of us who are a little bit more vintage, a word of advice: these people are professional criminals. They know their business. They did not just, fall out of the tree yesterday. They know how to talk to you to get that information. So once you engage them, even if you think you're that smart that you want to play with them, you need to be very cautious, because they know what they're doing, and without proper knowledge of what you're doing, you could easily give away some information that they could use. The next thing, we have to prevent elder abuse and financial exploitation. Now, to prevent that, first thing you need to learn is to spot those red flags that may lead you to believe that your loved one is being exploited somehow. Stay connected with your family, especially when people are isolated or on their own. They tend to do things that you may not be aware of, your parents or even your spouses. Avoid sharing personal information with anyone that doesn't have a legal right to have it. Of course, signing up for Social Security direct deposit, as well as VA benefits or any kind of government check that you get, is key, because that money goes straight into the bank and nobody touches it. One of the statistics that we saw recently was that the amount of money that normally gets stolen from the elderly they're not really big amounts. Once in a while, you hear about someone that, got, lost $100,000 or $200,000. But the majority of people don't have that kind of money. And thieves know that if they take a reasonable amount, the elderly person is more likely than not to report it to authorities or to their families for fear that their loved ones may think that they can no longer take care of their own business. And this is a threat to their own independence. So once again, staying connected and be open to your families makes a big difference when it comes to avoiding any kind of elder abuse or financial exploitation. If you have any questions concerning your benefits, your bank accounts, stocks, and that sort of thing, the best thing is just to contact a person that you trust, normally a family member, but not all the time. And it's important, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, shred documents. And the shredders are they come in two types. One that just strips documents, and then this the other one that just shred the document into little pieces. And that, of course, is the best shredder because nobody can take those documents back together if they're in that form. So it's essential, you don't just throw those documents, bank statements, and that sort of thing simply in the trash. You'll be surprised of a number of people that, for instance, do that and put the trash out in the curb the night before the trash man comes. One good idea is not to do that, to wait until the next morning before the trash collection people come, because if you put it out there overnight, people who, dumpster divers go through your trash, they may take stuff out of your trash can, and you left it out there. Now it's trash, it's public property. So it's essential that, you do some habits to try to mitigate and keep that possibility of being defrauded or documents to be taken from you. And lastly, remember the old adage, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And you hear this all the time, especially with things like where, they tell you, you won X amount of money from something that you never even heard of. And they say, well, you need this money, and we'll give you 100,000 if you send us 3,000 for tax and purposes and processing. And believe it or not, people go for it. And and especially if they tell you, okay, we'll make it easy, just we'll take it directly out of your bank account, and you turn around and give them that bank account number. And I have personally received calls from bank officials where elderly people go to the bank with, they have this letter already and they're ready to give away the documents. And thanks God, our tellers, are aware that, this may not sound right. And before they move on to allow that person to do that, they contact their bank managers. And like I said, I have had several calls from bank presidents and vice presidents in small communities about some issues, and at every single turn, it has been an attempt to defraud the elderly out of their Social Security checks. As I mentioned before, if you suspect any kind of fraud, okay, you got a couple of things that you could do to help your seniors and your family members. There is a national do not call list, okay? And this is a system that was created so you can register your phone, and telemarketers within 30 days after you're making this call to the registry will not be able to give you all these robocalls or releasing that number to someone, a third party. Now, they screen and probably do I know they do a pretty good job, but it's essential that number one, you can do it online. by going to www.donotcall.gov, or you can call their 88 number, 888-382-1222. Key to this is that to ensure that if you're doing this from a home phone or a cell phone, that you use the phone that you wish blocked to make the call. In other words, if you call from your home phone, that's the one that's going to get blocked, or your cell phone, that's the number. So you have to, if you have a home phone and cell phone, you need to make two separate calls to ensure that your phone number is disconnected from that system. Now, as I mentioned before, if you suspect fraud or financial exploitation, you can call the Office of the Inspector General of Social Security, and you have the address right there. And of course, if you suspect elderly abuse, call the elderly locator at 1-800-677-1116, or visit the eldercare.acl.gov, and they will connect you to the local authorities where you can report this elderly abuse. And of course, their website is www.ncea.acl.gov. And so you can report. And you know, sometimes we may take things that we think, maybe this is a small thing and it's not a big deal, or maybe I could be wrong. It's easier, or better rather, to report it and make sure that someone take a look at it than to simply ignore it, because you know, most of the people who are abusing these elderlies and taking their money, they always start with small amounts, and they slowly but surely increase. They tell them more sad stories, and sadder and sadder and sadder, and before you know, your loved ones' bank accounts are empty. I would like to talk a little bit about identity theft, which is one of the biggest problems we are seeing in our communities these days. Normally, at Social Security, we've been receiving an average of about 35,000 calls each and every month of people reporting ID theft. I want you to understand that ID theft is a crime, okay? It's a law enforcement issue, and technically Social Security has no responsibility to deal with that. It has to be, you know, just like any other theft. And although it has to do with a government check, it is up to the legal authorities, the police, to look at it and trying to resolve those issues and arrest the people that are doing this ID theft. We have a number of breakdowns of types of ID thefts that occur in the general public, and I have listed here a few so you can see how this really works. The first one is the cloning and concealment. This is a situation that the ID theft impersonates someone else in order to conceal their true identity. For instance, illegal immigrants that may be able to get your ID and hide the legal status so they can continue to work or remain in the country. And you know, some of them are even able to get a driver's license or ID based in your identity, but have their pictures. So this kind of ID theft is unlikely to be identified easily, because most of the time these people are they're not out to create a crime. They just want to be able to pose as someone else. And this will, you know, so they can get jobs or that kind of thing. They will not normally try to get any kind of credit because they know this will probably raise some alarm bells somewhere down the road. Now, on the other hand, the criminal ID theft is when a criminal fraudulently identified himself to, for instance, the police as another individual at the time of arrest. So if they get picked up by the police, they say, you know, I'm so-and-so, but that's not who they are. And this is called criminal ID theft. In some cases, those criminals have previously obtained state issue ID documents using documents or credentials that they stole from you and have simply presented a fake ID. Now, provided the work, changes may take place under the victim's name, letting the criminal off the hook because they say there's someone else. And of course, the victim might only learn about this incident by chance. For example, when they receive a summons from the court about a traffic violation, or they discover that their license has been suspended when they are stopped by the police officer somewhere down the road for a small traffic violation. Or of course, also when your employer, if you're in a position where your employer do background checks, they may realize that you have some charges pending and that sort of thing. The next thing is the synthetic ID theft. Now, this is a variation of the identity theft in which has recently become more common. The synthetic, in which identities are completely or partially fabricated. In most cases, technique involves combining a real social security number with a name and date of birth of another one that are simply associated with that, not associated with that number. Synthetic ID theft is more difficult to track as it doesn't show on either the person's credit report directly, or maybe appear as an entry new file in your credit bureau, or as a sub-file on your credit bureau report. This synthetic ID theft primarily harms the creditors who unwillingly grant credit fraudulently to these people who are using your social security number. And of course, individual victims can be affected if their name become confused with this synthetic identification, or if negative information may impact some of your credit report. The next thing that we also see quite a bit is the medical ID theft. The report indicates that crime, as Ray had mentioned a little bit earlier, there's a lot of Medicare money going around there from care that you receive, in specialized care and that sort of thing. Now, insurance theft, of course, is very common. And if the thief have your insurance information or your insurance card, they can seek medical attention posing as yourself. So once again, we talk about shredding your bills, especially your medical EOBs when they come in. Don't just throw them out, because these documents may have your social security number, your patient ID, your Medicare number that is on those documents. And basically, they will go out and seek medical care and use your Medicare number or your social security number as proof of medical insurance. And you won't find out about it until all of a sudden you get a huge bill for the deductible from Medicare, for instance, or your health insurance saying, you went to this emergency room, you billed, and emergency room visits are pretty expensive. So you go to the emergency room, you got a $35,000 bill, you're responsible for, $4,000 or $5,000, and you have never been there. So that's how the medical ID theft occurred. They use that information to charge their medical bills to you. The children ID theft is another issue that we encounter all the time. Now, children identity theft occurs when a minor's identity is used by another person to act like they're that person. The imposter can be a family member, a friend, even a stranger who targets children. The social security number of children are valued because they do not have any information associated with them. They haven't worked. They have, this really the clean records that have nothing associated with them. So the thieves can establish lines of credit, obtain driver's licenses, and even buy a house in the children's identity. We have seen those cases. This fraud can go undetected for years and years and years, as most children do not discover that there's a problem until much later in life. Children's identity theft is fairly common, and studies have shown that that a problem is growing. The largest studies of children identity theft, as reported by Richard Power of the Carnegie Mellon Scilab, the last data found that 40,000 children, 10.2% of the children in our country, are victims of ID theft. And of course, once again, this issue is not going to come up until much later. When I was going to college, I worked in a place that they used to cash checks for people that didn't have a bank account. I did this as a summer job, and some years back when some of the phone companies will give you $100 if you switch from one company to the other, and it was not uncommon to see an adult with a check, and the adult have their own ID card, but the check was in the child's name. Of course, this child did not sign up for a phone system. The parent did, using the child's social security number. Of course, we wouldn't cash those checks because it's illegal to do such thing. But it was apparently a common practice in for many parents or custodians, and sometimes even relatives, as I mentioned. I think one of the issues that the IRS, as you heard, I used to be the liaison for the IRS for Social Security, and I continue to have a lot of connections with the IRS, and they tell me that something that's happened in the last few years is parents allowing relatives or even some other people, friends or whatnot, to use their children's social security number so they can be claimed in someone else's record as a dependent, and then they will share the credit that the IRS gives to children. And once again, the IRS had waking up to the situation where now the system will kind of try to track those children to ensure, if all of a sudden they show up in somebody else's tax return, they kind of flag those. But no system is 100% perfect. And basically what you're seeing is that continuing problem of people and using the children's social security number for those purposes. And what you need to understand really is that once you release that social security number to a so-called friend or neighbor or whatnot, they will have it forever. And whenever they need it, they can use it or give it to other people. Some of the issues that we saw during the pandemic also included parents saying, well, somebody used my child's social security number to be able to get the stimulus money for the child or the child credit. And, once the IRS investigated this, most of the time it came out that at some point in the past, this parent allowed someone else to use that social security number for filing taxes. And now, of course, the stimulus money is going to that person, not to the parent or to the child that needs it. And that created a lot of problems. And of course, it's illegal to do this. The next thing that we can talk about is the financial identity theft. And of course, this is the most common type of ID theft, and it's related to finances. Financial ID theft includes obtaining credit cards, loans, goods, services, while claiming to be someone else. And this is something that is really prevalent, especially when you order things in the internet. If you're not using a secure system, that happens, and you have to be aware to keep that information confidential and safeguarded. Although, thieves are really getting ingenious as to how they do these things. They have, I know for a fact that they have been using some kind of gadget that they can put in the gas station pay little thing where you put your credit card in to pay and they record that information. It's becoming harder and harder. If you go, for instance, to Walmart, which is where I normally fill up my tank, they have a secure system of doing that. But the older gas stations may not have it. And as an example, a few years back, probably about 4 years ago, my wife and I took a trip to Louisiana to visit some friends. And all I did is just bought gas on the way there. We stayed with friends, had, I think, 1 or 2 meals at a restaurant, came back, and we came back Sunday night. On Monday, my credit card company calls me about my purchases of $1,000 plus of audio equipment the day before at Best Buy. And, I mean, I'm a relatively smart guy and I was really cautious, but somewhere along the line between going there and coming back in either those gas stations or the restaurant, someone was able to get my credit card information. And of course, the credit card suspended the payments and saved the semi-new credit card. But once again, it's a good example that, it could happen to anybody, and it happened to me. And finally, of course, the tax ID theft, as I mentioned before a little bit, is one of the major problems and the categories that we see across the nations. And of course, it's the most common method is to use a person's authentic name, address, and social security number to file taxes with false information. And this results on a refund directly deposited into somebody else's account. And the thieves in this case can also try to get a job or other employment, will report the income of real taxes, of real taxpayers. And that results in problems. So basically what that is saying is that, but you will have someone file taxes in your behalf early on in the tax season and put some, numbers in there. They get a refund in an account and they can close it. And by the time you file, the IRS said, wait a minute, we already have your file and we already sent you the refund. And there goes the problem, as well as what happens, for instance, a person who may apply for a job and get a job using your social security number. The truth of the matter is that by law, all employers are required to take social security tax. So that is, and Medicare taxes. So this is money that is being taken out of that person's check, is going into your account, into your Social Security and Medicare account. And the salary that this person is getting is reported to the IRS as your salary. So when you, at the end of the year, file your taxes and say, you earn X amount of money, the IRS will send that back and say, no, our records show that you actually made this much more money, and thereby you owe us this much money in taxes. So once again, this is some of the the top 8 or 7 types of fraud ID theft that we encounter, but by no means this is an all-comprehensive list. Like I said, there's over 3.2 million reports of fraud across the country. In 2019, that's how many was reported to the Federal Trade Commission. And it says here that 1 out of 10 people lost money in 2019 to a total of $667 million. Now, like I mentioned before, a lot of this money are small amounts of money that are never even reported. So the $667 million is a conservative number. We believe that to be much higher. And, the 3.2 million people reported the fraud. That's an undercounted number as well. So, what are the impacts of, your being a victim of identity theft? If you look in the left side, for example, the person use your information to open a credit card. What's going to happen? Well, down the road, when you need a credit or a credit card or loan, you're going to have some problems. Sometimes the utility companies will use your credit report in order to for you to open an account. Once again, you can have a denial of that, or if you need the electricity right there on the spot, what's going to happen is that the utility company may ask you to put a huge deposit in order for you to get electricity or water, and then you're going to have to sort this out with whatever agency you're having a problem with. When you applying for your tax refunds, you're going to have denial of medical care, also as well. Getting loans, you're going to have harassment from debt companies, because if that debt goes into collection, all the information that they have is your social security number, and they're going to go after you to collect that money. And they don't want to hear stories. They want to see evidence. So you're going to have to go through the process of gathering all these legal documents to ensure that you can prove to these debt collectors companies that this is not you. People will be applying for employment. You're going to have all kind of lawsuits. You have stress of an embarrassment, anxiety that works out, that comes as part of being a victim of this kind of thing. And I think this is one of the reasons that a lot of people do not report it. It's such as a couple of $100, $1,000, whatever, and they think I'd rather don't deal with it and get that out of my mind. And once again, there's a lot of time and expense associated with trying to recover your identity once it's lost. Now, remember, your social security number is you should protect this. We do this. Your records are confidential. You should be careful about sharing that number, even when people ask you. For instance, doctor's offices, some of them still ask for your social security number in the little forms when you register. They don't need that number. They don't need that number because they need your Medicare number or your insurance number. They don't need that, and they know that, but they have some old forms, and they just I just don't fill it out, and let them ask me if they need it, and then explain to me why. Once again, keep your cards and other documents that show your social security number in a safe place. You don't need to be walking around with your social security card. And that is because you don't need to show it to anybody unless you need employment. Your employers, if you get a new job, the employer has to see that card. Other than that, keep that safe, keep it at home in a safety deposit box, whatever it is. So don't carry that because you don't need it. You don't need it, and you can save yourself a lot of trouble if you do that, saving it. So what to do if you find out that you're a victim? First, call the companies where you know that the fraud occurred and let them know what's going on. Place a fraud alert on your credit report. So you have to call the credit reporting companies, let them know that this is a problem, and they can lock your credit for you. And of course, very important is to report the ID theft to the Federal Trade Commission. And I'm going to show you a new website here that they started recently that will help you with this. Now, so IDSafegov is a new website that will help you deal with the situation if you become a victim, okay? They will ask you some questions. They will help you to get a recovery plan together and some actions that you need to take. And this is what a website looks like. Once again, it's the Federal Trade Commission, IDSafegov. And you simply go to the website, get started right there. You pin on it. They will give you some information. They will ask you some questions to try to figure out where you're at in the process. And they give you, like I said, a personal recovery plan. They'll work you through each step. They help you with the affidavits that you need to do. They're autofill once you fill out your information. And they will customize this to send to each credit bureau. So you can just print the letters and send it to them. It's certified, sign them. It'll give you an updated plan on how to deal with the process to recover from ID theft. And of course, it will advise you what to do if you're affected by specific data breach as well. How can we help? Okay, the way Social Security help, like I said, is through education and outreach like I'm doing today. We can help you with replacement of Social Security cards, issue new, a second Social Security number only in extraordinary circumstances. And let me tell you that in the past 84 years, I think we have replaced maybe under 300 Social Security numbers. And the reason is that once we give you a new number, it still had to be attached to the old number because that's where all your wages and so on were reported. So getting a Social Security, reclaiming Social Security is very, very hard, nearly impossible, okay? Then, of course, we always verify your Social Security records. We can correct your earnings if you let us know that there's a problem. And, of course, we have a number of hotlines where you can call for referrals and let us know what's going on. The things that we cannot do, once your credit record is messed up, we can help you with that. That's just not something we can do. File ID theft reports, we don't do that, or act as an advocate, which simply don't have the authority to do any of those things. So once again, once you know, many people call the office and we simply refer them to the different authorities because we don't have anything that we can do for them. Credit report bureaus, you can get those in the internet as well. I have the Equifax, Expedient, and so you have all the information right there, address as well. And this, once again, you can get all this information into from the internet. The Federal Trade Commission, the phone number 877-438-4338. Tax issues, of course, you need to talk to the IRS. And then for the Federal Trade Commission, ID theft and the resources, you can go and get that. And, probably one of the smart things to do is to make sure that you get a copy of your credit report. You get one free a year. And since there's 3 reporting agencies, what I personally do every 4 months, like clockwork, I order a credit report from one of the companies. So in that way, every 4 months, I'm aware of any changes that may come into my credit report rather than just wait once a year to get them all 3. Now, here we go. The last thing I would like to cover is, as you all know, Social Security offices have been closed to the public for the last 2 years. We are now envisioning where we are sometime in mid-April, to start seeing people in person at the offices. However, that will be by appointment only. So all we want to make sure that you understand, number one, that the easiest way to do business with us is by going to SSA.gov, socialsecurity.gov, our website. You can do most of the business there, whether it's retirement, disability, applying for Medicare. All that information is right there. If you cannot do that, you're welcome to call our national number, 1-800-772-1213. And we can answer a lot of questions over the phone. Finally, if we need to, we will schedule you an appointment to come to the office. Now, once again, to come to the office, you need to have an appointment. Mask will be required in all offices, regardless of your vaccination status. And of course, the capabilities are limited for physical distancing. So you may be required to go to your car and wait until we can check you in. So be aware of the bad weather, cold, hot, whatever it is. And we ask that you come along if any way possible. That minimizes the number of people at the office because we can only have so many bodies in that waiting room. So at this time, this concludes my presentation. And I think it's back to you, Ray.
Yes, thank you very much. Good information. We do have some questions for you. One individual wanted to know, there's a lot of places that you go to that, or even places, websites and things like that, that will request the last 4 digits of your social security number. Is that a problem?
No, that's not really a problem because, there are millions of people with that same last 4 numbers. They're just trying to connect that with, whatever information you gave them, name and that sort of thing. And they normally use the credit reports to do that. And if you look at your credit report, normally we'll have the last 4 in there as well. This is not something that anyone have access to outside of Social Security. So, they can't get to our records. So that's a, thing that happened.
Okay, next question. You brought up about a lot of places, a lot of businesses that do have a place on their forms, and this is in particular with medical offices and hospitals and stuff that request your social security number. And I've heard other speakers talk about how that information is really not required for them to provide medical services. It's not tied to their insurance or something like that. So in a situation where an individual who requires medical care finds themselves in that position, what should they do if the provider refuses to see them if they won't provide the social security number?
In all honesty, I never heard of anybody actually reject not giving you care, because there's a lot of lawsuits that happen to that. But by law, they're not allowed to ask your social security. So if something like that's happened, you may want to call the authorities in that case. But by federal law, they cannot use that social security number. Some of you may recall, sometimes that used to be your driver's license numbers. It was in my military ID card all the time. When I was teaching at OU for a long time, and my faculty number was in big red numbers, my social security number. So all these agencies and driver's license bureaus that had moved away from that because of that issue.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The next question that came up, you may know recently Medicare also updated their website and is providing some new services, new things that you can do with your Medicare.gov account. And most people are probably familiar by now that you can also have a mysocialsecurity.gov account where you can look at all of your information and things like that apply to your Social Security account, including like your retirement and things like that. Curious, on the Medicare.gov account, if you lose your Medicare card, you can print a new card. Is that function available on the mysocialsecurity.gov account website?
I'm glad you asked. Yes, absolutely. You can print a copy of your Medicare card in either one of the sites, either My Social Security or My Medicare website.
But can you get a Social Security card as well?
Well, that's a different story. The way this works is uh, we have 48 states that currently, if you live in those states, you can go online and use your real ID to get a replacement Social Security card online because we have a secure system already set up with the state. Unfortunately, Oklahoma is not one, and I do understand that Oklahoma had been issuing um, real IDs for a while, but they're not actually connected to the federal system, which means they're not valid in order to receive a replacement Social Security card. If you do need a replacement Social Security card, the process goes in one of two ways. You can, and the easiest way is to download the application from our website and mail that in along with your actual ID to your local Social Security office, where we will process them and send your ID back via registered mail within a day or two. If you're not able to do that, you will have to call the office and make an appointment for that purpose. Once again, we are not letting people in like the old days, everybody come in and took a number. That's not something that we're doing at this point. So if you need a replacement card, the easiest way is just to mail in the application.
Okay. Last question. Just talking about, you've updated the Social Security website. There's so many things that people can do just by going to that website, and including getting their Medicare started and things like that. The one feedback that we have gotten, a lot of the clients, particularly in my field that I'm dealing with, are the older Americans who haven't been dealing with computers as much as other people. And sometimes they have challenges navigating through different websites. Are there any tutorials or things like that that are available for individuals who want to utilize the services of the Social Security website, but just maybe having trouble finding exactly what they're looking for?
Well, the funny thing is that we do have a whole bunch of tutorials that is in the Social Security YouTube web channel.
Okay.
So you need to go onto YouTube, type in Social Security, and it'll take you to our channel. And there's all kind of tutorials about things from, applying for cars, retirement, disability, Medicare, and a lot of your questions are there. And they have step-by-step instructions on how to get some of the stuff done. So, once again, you still need access to the internet to see those things.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I didn't know that. I'll be sure and point people that direction. Thank you, Jose. I appreciate it. Thanks again for your presentation. And thank you, folks, for attending our webinar today. I hope you found the information useful. If by chance you know of someone who wasn't able to attend the webinar today that might want to hear this information, the recording of today's webinar is going to be available on our website. You just simply go back to where you registered at oid.ok.gov/senior fraud/ and you'll be able to find the link to the recording there. Want to make sure that you please join us for our other webinars in this series. Next Wednesday, our speaker is going to be Elaine Dodd, who's the Executive Vice President of the Fraud Division for the Oklahoma Bankers Association. She's going to be speaking on how banks can help prevent fraud. So if you've not registered for that, go to the website. Again, that is oid.ok.gov. Jose, if you would not mind, I think you've got the final slide that has the list of our webinars on your presentation. If you could pop that back up there and go to that last slide so that we can.
I'm sorry. Yep. Here we go.
One more. There it is. There's the list of the presentations and the dates that they're going to be on. So please take advantage of that. Also, if you do need some help related to fraud, particularly Medicare fraud, there is our phone number, 1-800-763-2828. We are a division of the Oklahoma Insurance Department, and we would be very happy to help you with any questions that you may have. Last thing, I want to remind everybody, our speakers can talk until they are blue in the face about fighting fraud. But the real fraud fighters are going to be you as the consumer. Please take the time to report anything that you think is suspicious that might possibly be fraud. If you're not sure exactly which agency you would need to report that type of fraud to, feel free to give us a call. We'll help you try and figure out which agency you might need to report that to. It's very, very important. Again, if we can say everything we want to, but unless you guys report suspected fraud, they get away with it. So with that, I'll thank you one last time and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.